Hello, guys. We are back so that we could talk about the last two rules that I'll be sharing in this series of introduction to Python, where we're talking about variables. Right. We've talked about in the last video we talked about variable names being intuitive, and we also talked about making up for spaces by using underscores. Now, here we're going to talk about something I think is so important, and it's about Python keywords and reserved names. Here I'm going to head up to the Google search page, and I'm going to type Python reserved. I call them reserved names, right? So Python reserved names. You're going to see a bunch. There's so many. I can see that. There are so many of them, right? So there are reserved words. Look at that. They say they have 33 keywords. So there are lots of things. There are lots of names that are reserved for Python. Now, it's important that we recognize that some keywords and names are reserved specifically for Python and its programming purpose. So here we are going to, avoid using Python keywords slash reserved names. Now, what makes up Python keywords and reserved names? They could be names that are reserved for functions or for Python built-in functions. For instance, if I get back to this place and I write Python built-in functions, right? You can see there are a ton of them. You can see over here you have things like this. We have all this, right? These names are reserved. Now, the question is, what if we decide to be bullish or just decide that we're just going to ignore that and then go ahead to make use of things like the word print or, you know, Python reserved word? What's going to happen? So I'll tell you. I'm going to show you what's going an implication of that. So now we're going to talk about my favorite example for this whenever I'm taking classes is using the sum function, right? So you see here we have sum. So the sum function returns the sum of a start value plus an iterables of numbers. So that's how it is. So basically, the sum function returns, the it returns the maybe total, yes, not maybe total of all numbers, maybe within say a collection. Let's just call it that, within a collection, right? Now with sum is reserved. Now if you look at sum here, you can see that it's green, and that's the interesting thing about using IDEs. It's green. That tells you, if I come here and I write something like print, which is also reserved, you can see that it's green too, right? So that's what you would notice it when you are using reserved words, functions, and stuff like that. If I write or, see, reserved, see the way that is. Now say the sum function. Now normally what the sum function does is let me create this. I want to create something called a list, and a list is it's a data structure. It's a collection of items that are sequenced in numbers there, right? They're arranged. So and we're going to talk about lists later on, but I'm going to create this. I'm going to call this list underscore numbers. Right, inside of it we're going to have a list of numbers and just simple numbers: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you can see we've got a very good looking list. So I'll run this, and just to make sure, I'll just print to stream. And again, this is me using a Python built-in function, and I call this list of numbers. So you can see that it has these numbers inside. Now I want to know the sum of all the numbers here, and I come over to sum, then I put it in here. So I just put list underscore numbers, and what does that do? That returns the list of the numbers, the total, the sum of the numbers here. So if you add all this together, you're going to have 15. So now you get the drill. The sum function is Python's, built-in function, and this is what it does. Now in comes me, and I decide to break rule number 4, and I decided that I'm going to create a list, and I'm going to, because I want to sum up everything inside the list, I'm going to call this list sum, right? And I'm going to create a list, and I'm going to say it is the sum of the ages of whatever. So, and I have 34, and I have 45, and I have 67, and I have 87, right? And then I create this. Now, see what Python does every time you create a variable is that it assigns it to memory. So now it has assigned sum to memory as, and it references a list. So if I write sum, what I get is a list. So you see, now there's a confusion, and I've done this, and I've left this IDE, and I'm gone to do something else. And then some other developer comes through and says, all right, so we have a bunch of age data, and we are trying to sum them up. So what do we do? And then the developer comes in and decides that, all right, let's sum up this age. So he picks it up and says sum, then open bracket, then maybe somewhere he has created, or he or she has created a list, and calls this age underscore list. And then inside of that, we have different age. We have 34, 56, 98, 100, a bunch of old people, a couple of old people, and that's that. So then this is run. Then he or she comes in and decides, oh, I'm going to put age underscore list in here. Did we run this? Right. So we're going to put age underscore list in here. And so with that, we've put it, and we're like, we want to sum this age, and then we run it. And then all of a sudden, there's a type error. And you're wondering, why is there a type error? Say the object is not callable. So that means the sum cannot work with, this square brackets, and it cannot act like a function. And so there's a confusion. So you see what I'm talking about? So this rule here prevents us from using, Python keywords, because it creates some confusion that is crazy. You see that? So right now we are looking at what is supposed to be a Python function, and all of a sudden it's no longer a Python function that give us a sum of all these numbers. Now it's supposed to be a list. You see, and it's telling us list, object is not callable. So we should have this in mind whenever we are creating variables, and we try as much as possible. We should avoid Python reserved names, function names, built-in functions, and all of that, because they are reserved for Python program purposes, and that's important. Now one final one I'm going to squeeze in is finally when you are creating variables, try as much as possible not to confuse people, right? There's some confusion can happen, so I'll call this less confusion. because there are some letters and numbers that look alike. Try as much as possible to avoid these things. For instance, if we have letters that look alike, we have, you see, there's this is the number 0, then there's an uppercase for O. Then we have, what else do we have? We have L, and then we have the number 1. So all this can be really confusing when you're using them, right? And you try as much as you can to avoid this kind of things that will cause confusion when creating variables, right? I mean, this, for those who are starting out learning Python, this is like, stuff you should put into perspective, into context every time you're starting out. So there are certain errors, there are certain basic errors that happen that gets learners overwhelmed, and they keep asking, oh, what did I do wrong, what did I do wrong? So these things happen. So remember these rules, they are really important. you know Follow these rules, and there are a bunch of other rules, right? But if you have this at the tip of your fingers, it makes your program less, with little or no confusion, makes it easy for people to read through your code. And remember, readability counts. Right, so if you've gotten to this point, congratulations, you have picked up a few things in your journey in learning Python. And from here, we're going to move on into data types, and we start playing around with data types and stuff. We're going to look at the different scenarios around data types. Right. Again, this channel is basically for learning Python, and we are driving this Python knowledge towards data science, right? If you like this, share it with your friends who are learning Python. Share it with people, even share it with your enemies that are learning Python. And subscribe in case new videos come out, you get the notification and all. And just remember, the learning phase it's a phase, and whenever you struggle, you're picking up skills. So don't get overwhelmed easily. Breathe.